If you're a fan of the Myers-Briggs type indicator, you've probably heard of temperaments. And if you haven't, no worries. We'll break it down for you in this episode. Temperament is one lens through which to view the MBTI. There are 4 temperaments identified by Dr. David Keirsey, and they spring from 2 basic dimensions of human behavior: how we communicate and how we take action, or more simply, what we say and what we do. And just a quick note, if you'd like to get in touch, please reach out to me on atopcareer.com or on LinkedIn and let me know you're tuning in to Myers-Briggs Question Corner. I hope you like this episode. Welcome to the new Myers-Briggs Question Corner. I'm Edith Richards.
And I'm Mark Maffey.
And we're here to answer your questions about all things personality and all things Myers-Briggs.
From college to careers to relationships, personality is the key to finding the right fit.
Hey, Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Edith. As many of you know, I'm a high school teacher and I'm back in school. But it's been really cool to view human interaction with all this knowledge of MBTI types. I feel like this knowledge has really helped me figure out how I can relate with people and how I can bring value to each person that I interact with. I love what you mentioned in the introduction about understanding the motivations behind what people say and what they do. So I'm really excited to dig more into this.
And that brings us to today's episode, which is about what we call temperaments.
Yeah, last episode, we went into the in-depth descriptions about the MBTI preferences. Today, we're going to put it all together to determine what your personality type is. Hopefully, the audience was able to determine their preferences, what their preferences were last episode, and are intrigued to figure out more about what this all means. What does it mean to be extroverted? What does it mean to be sensing, feeling, and perceiving? What happens when we put all those things together? That's something that I think we're going to really dig in today and find out a little bit more.
Yes, right. And a quick note to all you folks who are tuning in. You are the person who knows yourself best, and only you can determine what your Myers-Briggs type is. And it's really our hope on this podcast to get you inspired to learn more and use this as self-understanding so that you can make better decisions for yourself, that you can communicate better with others, and just have a greater sense of awareness overall.
No doubt, Edith. Today's a great opportunity to know thyself. I think one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is the knowledge of self because it empowers you. It gives you agency and allows you to find the right fit in life. Like I always tell my students, know thyself and put thyself in the right fit. I'm glad we are giving our audience this gift of self-knowledge today.
Yep, for sure. And Mark, we've talked a lot about self-awareness in adults. And I think I've mentioned how many adults have come up to me over the years after they've learned about their personality types and they say, I wish I had known this when I was, like 18 or 20 years old. And with you being a high school teacher, I just want to give a shout out to advocate for our young people learning more about these topics. There's a lot of evidence for how improved self-awareness is linked to better academic performance, better stress management and teamwork and achieving goals. And at the basis, it's about learning to understand yourself more clearly. And that just brings more feelings of self-confidence and purpose. And I want to point out that also there's a lot of negative information about the Myers-Briggs out there, and it really saddens me to read these articles and hear this rhetoric. A couple of points about assessment, and This is based on my own stance as a master practitioner. First, you're a unique individual apart from a personality type. So, Mark, you've identified as an INFP type. That doesn't mean that you have the same strengths and weaknesses of other INFPs. You're
Mhm.
not going to have the same career path or interests necessarily. And, not everyone fits nice and neatly into the 16 Myers-Briggs types. Not everyone has a clear preference on each of the four dichotomies. And that can be for many different reasons. And third, when I give an assessment, my role is to help the other person come to greater self awareness. My purpose isn't to determine accuracy. Only the person, him or herself, can determine the best fit type. Now, when I'm talking about accuracy here, and bear with me, folks, because I'm just going to go on to just a little bit of a soapbox here. There's a lot of talk about how inaccurate this assessment is. So
Mhm.
let's remember that there's a lot of fake personality tests online, and anybody can take those. And those shouldn't be confused with the real Myers-Briggs assessment, which can only be taken through a practitioner. However, and this is one unfortunate thing about the MBTI, anyone with a master's degree or graduate work in statistics can purchase the assessment through the Myers-Briggs Foundation. So not only is it possible to have people who aren't familiar with the assessment administering it, they're not always giving what I would call a proper overview or relating it to the recipient in a way that person can hear. To be a true practitioner, you have to go through a certification process and learn the science behind it. Now, back to the inaccurate results here. When people talk about this, they're often referring to reliability or validity. Reliability means how consistently the assessment measures what it intends to measure. If it's reliable, it's going to produce consistent results, and this is measured through reliability coefficients. Assessments that produce reliability coefficients of 80, meaning it's 80% consistent, are generally respected in the field of psychology. And the Myers-Briggs consistently produces reliability factors above 80%. So, with that said, measurement error is a problem for psychometrics, for all psychometrics. And no assessment is going to produce perfect test retest reliability. So, a lot of reliability is associated with taking these fake versions of the MBTI that I previously mentioned. Now, talking about the validity of the assessment, this refers to accuracy and the degree to which the theory supports the scoring. So it's
Mhm.
important to note here that the Myers-Briggs was never intended to be a comprehensive evaluation of someone's personality. So like we mentioned before, Mark, if you're an INFP type, you're not the same on all dimensions as other INFP types. There's a lot more to your personality than the Myers-Briggs measures. The Myers-Briggs or any other personality assessment for that matter aren't inherently valid or invalid. Only the interpretations made from the data are. So again, this is why it's important to have a certified administrator explain the limitations of the assessment, and every assessment has limitations. One of the big ones is that it doesn't predict real world outcomes. So let me say emphatically that the Myers-Briggs is not, nor was it ever meant to be predictive. It's descriptive. It doesn't
Mhm.
claim to tell us what career or workplace or relationship will be the most satisfying. And unfortunately, it's often misused. For example, screening applicants for a job. That's one that really kind of grinds my gears a bit. And
Yeah.
it should never be used for this purpose because it doesn't measure ability. It's intended to be used to have a conversation that will lead to better self awareness, self management, communication, and things like that.
Absolutely. I mean, so well said, and I'm so glad that we have a MBTI practitioner on here, so that way we can kind of look into some of this with some depth and have an idea that some of the information might be valid and reliable. Because one of the things that you mentioned is not inherently like the assessment is not inherently reliable or valid. It's the interpretation, right? And that's why you need to have that practitioner to help you and determine that. But what I really love is what you said at the end is like these are conversations that we're having that should lead to more self-awareness, self-management. The information we are providing in this podcast is a means for that greater self-awareness. And like, you shouldn't use the information to pigeonhole someone or typecast them, or even use it as a directive of like how you should live your life. It's just information to help you learn more about yourself, right? And I think if this information can be used to promote greater self-awareness, that it's going to lead to greater self-management, communication, and relationship building. So I think it's important. I love how you mentioned all this, that it's important that we don't get into this human tendency to want to be lazy and typecast, but we use this as information to just continue to gather more information, to help us make better decisions, help us in our communication, help us in how we build relationships and manage ourselves better in that type of situation. So, all right, I love how we came with that information as to really help people understand as they're going through this information. But let's really, really get into it. What we're going to do on this episode, audience, is Edith is going to describe each MBTI personality type. It will be a brief description of the type because we have 16 types to go over.
Yep, that's great, Mark. So let's start and jump right into this. But before we do, let's talk about temperament. There are 4 temperaments: SJ, SP, NT, and NF. And this refers to Keirsey's temperaments on how we receive information and how we take action based on the information we receive. So communication and action are keywords here. So first, communication. People are going to naturally talk about and think about what they're interested in. So if you tune in carefully, you'll notice that there are 2 broad-based areas or subject matters: concrete and abstract. And these are essentially S and N, sensing and intuition, on the Myers-Briggs. Concrete refers to subject matter first, that is our everyday reality. So facts and figures and real-time information, anything you can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. So let's think about things like work, hobbies, home, family, news, sports, the weather, whatever is happening here and now. And then we have the abstract folks. So these people talk primarily about ideas, theories, what's going to happen in the future, beliefs, fantasies, all of life's what ifs. Now, the second letter is going to refer to action. So we're all trying to accomplish our goals. And if you watch people closely, there are 2 fundamentally different types of action: cooperative and utilitarian. People who act primarily in a cooperative manner follow a socially acceptable way of doing things. They try to do the right thing. They follow social rules, etc. People who act primarily in a utilitarian manner are pragmatic. They get results. They're efficient and effective. So these 4 temperaments are based on the 2 letters they share in common with their Myers-Briggs type indicator. And again, there are 4 temperaments: SJ, SP, NT, and NF. So if we take a deep dive into all of these, Mark, it's going to make for a very long episode. So I'm going to suggest today we're going to focus on our SJ friends. What do you think about that?
I think that's great. And I think our audience is loving us for that. They're like, we have 16 of these personality types, and we're going to do this all through this episode. I definitely love the idea of just focusing on the SJ friends that we have. And boy, I do love that breakdown that you just made of the Myers-Briggs types into their temperament categories. So instead of looking at all 16, how can we divide those 16 into smaller categories? And I think that there's 4 of them. I think that's so efficient. And it's like these MBTI personality types are perfectly separated by these temperaments. Like you got like these 4 families, right? So you got the SJ family, like you mentioned, the SP family, and the NT family, and then the NF family. And each MBTI personality type within that family is kind of related to each other. So if you're an
Yeah.
SJ, you kind of You might be an introvert or an extrovert, but you're kind of related within that family. So definitely love that. Before we do get into this deep dive of the SJs, I wanted to express how awesome your explanation of temperament was. It really helps me simplify things when it comes to our human experience. What you're really saying is life really comes down to how we receive information and how we act when we receive that information. But like you talked about before, taking information through sensing or intuition is not the only way that you can take in information, but this does provide us with some useful information for self awareness. Acting in a utilitarian or cooperative manner is not the only way we can act, but boy, does it give us some useful information.
Yeah, for sure. And Mark, I really like what you said there about the families. That's a great analogy for temperaments. So, taking a quick look at SJ types. So, these are, and this is Dr. David Keirsey's words here, known as the guardians. They're the guardians of tradition, they're committed to duty, and they tend to engage in service jobs and activities. They make sacrifices, they volunteer, and they're very loyal. They're consistent. They need to have their environment sorted out before they can jump into anything fun. So, work before play. They are not likely to enjoy change. They are they are also the most common of the four temperaments. So these are ISTJ, ISFJ, ESTJ, and ESFJ.
Boy, these I've mentioned this before, but these SJs are always the individuals I want in my group because they are consistent, they are organized, they're focused, and they're detail oriented. I don't have those attributes, right? So I love that. They don't procrastinate. They get work done and are productive. Like if I'm looking for a group, I'm looking for an SJ. So I love that. Now, I might get frustrated by them because they're so different than me, but boy, do I need them in my life.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I very much appreciate my SJ friends.
No.
Let's take a look at ISTJ first. So this is the one of the most common Myers-Briggs types, 14 to 19% of the population. ISTJs like to carefully plan things out in advance. They are well organized, like you said, very detail oriented. They follow an established set of rules and they are not likely to veer off the path that they've set. They're logical, they follow procedures, they're dependable, they're trustworthy. They can also be stubborn. They may be seen as cold and insensitive because they're direct. They're very honest and sometimes they're blunt. They also tend to be heavy hitters in the self-blame category because they are so responsible and hardworking. If things don't go right, they're going to blame themselves. At their core, they're very devoted friends and partners. They need order in their lives. So they're going to gravitate towards work that has clearly defined schedules and assignments, careers that require structure and perseverance and accuracy and stability, and also a respect for rules and tradition. ISTJs strive for perfection. So let's think military, politics, police officers, and then also let's think about work that requires a lot of detail, like accounting or a librarian or a surgeon or a detective.
And could you provide us some examples of ISTJs in popular culture?
Sure. Just a disclaimer though, this is my own thought. It's not verified, but I'd say George Washington, a number of
Okay.
politicians actually, the first George Bush, maybe Dwight Eisenhower, maybe even Mitch McConnell, a number of military generals and admirals. We're not going to find as many ISTJ actors or
Mm.
musicians as with other types simply because of their nature. But there are a few and you can Google them. But again, this may not be accurate. I've even seen Barack Obama typed as an ISTJ, and I'm not sure I agree with that one. But again, I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Love how you mentioned again how a lot of times we gravitate to certain career types based off what our personality type what we have as our personality type. I mean, you see a lot of individuals who you say you won't necessarily find an actor who's an ISTJ just because they maybe don't gravitate to that. So I do love that in general. So, all right, let's talk about our ISFJs. Are they very similar to the ISTJs?
Yeah, yeah. So both are going to be logical, organized, striving for order, disliking change. They're going to be also detail oriented. The difference with the ISFJ is that they're going to base their decisions on harmony and
Mhm.
other people's emotional well being, while ISTJs may dismiss people's feelings in order to get things done. So ISFJs are more likely to sacrifice effectiveness and efficiency in order
Mhm.
to preserve people's feelings, at least people they care about. As with most feeling types, if you do a feeler wrong, watch out. They are vindictive and unforgiving, or they can be vindictive and unforgiving. And this is especially true for an ISFJ type. ISFJs have also been accused of being doormats because of their self sacrificing nature. They have a strong appreciation for the emotional value of traditions, and they may cling to things with a sentimental value.
Love it, love it. So let me see if I can get this right. So you're saying that the ISFJs and ISTJs are similar in their affinity to get things done, be loyal. They're both detail oriented and love structure and order, but ISFJs values other people's well-being and their decisions. Thus, they appear to be more caring and understanding. So I'll definitely love that. So, like, who would be some famous ISFJs?
Let me just specify this. I think ISFJs are going to prioritize other people's well being into their decision making process more than an ISTJ type would do. But when I'm thinking about a famous ISFJ, I immediately think of Mother Teresa. She worked tirelessly for her causes, and she didn't ask for any notoriety. She didn't really seek out the spotlight. And this is very typical of an ISFJ type because they're the glues that hold organizations and teams together. These are the folks who work behind the scenes to make sure that everything's in order and that people are taken care of and they're happy. They tend to keep their own thoughts and values to themselves a lot of the time, but they do have an outward focus on the needs of others. And they observe a lot, but they don't usually share their observations or feelings except with their loved ones. But this doesn't mean that they don't have feelings. They feel very strongly.
That makes sense. That does make sense. All right, let's talk about our extroverted SJs. Let's start with the ESTJ. Give us a
Oh,
little information about them.
okay. Yes, ESTJs. They also represent tradition and order. These are known as the executives on the 16 Personalities website, and I think that is a great descriptor. We often see ESTJs in leadership roles. They are happy to lead the way, they delegate responsibilities, they organize people and processes, and they tend to be dedicated and hardworking. They are very strong believers in rules and law. They lead by example and they expect a lot from their people. They believe that if you say that you're going to do something, you'd better do it. They are strong willed, they're direct, they enjoy creating order, and they have a clear set of standards that they follow. They are also known for being inflexible and judgmental. If you are not pulling your weight, the ESTJ is going to let you know very directly because they at the end of the day they believe it's their duty to make things right. They may also be focused on social status, especially what's visible to them, like rank or position. And they may place a lot of emphasis on this at the expense of things that aren't always visible, like ideas and unspoken hierarchies. They thrive in organizations with a hierarchical structure. So places like the military, government, the police force. and they have a natural drive to be in charge. They are loyal, they're dedicated, and they don't appreciate people who don't measure up or people who simply lead a different kind of life. And as a result, they may appear uncaring, or they may, in some extreme cases, come across as a bully. Also, struggle to see the long term implications of their behavior.
It is. I think you just described one of my good friends, and if he's listening to this, he knows exactly who I'm talking about. I mean, this describes him perfectly, and I love his leadership ability. And a lot of times he'll say, you and I are a lot alike, which we are. Like we do share some things that are some very personality traits. But I would always tell him, like, hey, like, but I come off a little bit more caring you do and understanding. And he's like, yeah, I don't care. Like, it just things need to get done in a certain fashion, and that sort of thing. So it's funny how understanding the personality types, I understand that person more, and then I'm able to, direct my behavior differently, or just give me a little bit more information and how I should relate with them, so that we have a good relationship. And I think it really works out that way. And I'm seeing a lot of SJs in my life, and I feel like a lot of the commonalities that these SJs share is that they're highly driven, they're highly structured, they're hardworking, they're focused on getting things done. And I think a lot of times these ESTJs are just an extroverted version of those characteristics, and that's why they might seem very assertive, strong-willed, and very direct.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. When I think of an ESTJ, I think about a lot of people I work with every day. And in terms of famous people, I think of Judge Judy. And the reason I think this is that she's very adamant about the law and following the rules. She she is not interested in hearing people's sob stories. She focuses strictly on the law. She makes pretty quick decisions, and I also see her as fair and impartial, and she is very clearly the one who's in charge.
What a great example. Like that is a perfect example. Like I could
I
just
know, right?
like when you mention her, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly fits the descriptions to the T. No doubt about that. So how do our feelers impact our extroverted SJs? Are they like the get it done and productive ESTJs, but they are coming to it from a more caring and empathic level, and really making decisions that benefit other people?
Well, let's take a look at our ESFJs. So they share many of the characteristics of ESTJs. They're organized, they're strong-willed, they're loyal, they like their order, and they can also be inflexible. The big difference is that ESFJs focus on people's emotions and may instantly absorb people's emotions as they're happening. So much so that they may take them on as their own. They also base their decisions primarily on how they will affect others. So I'd say ESFJs also tend to be more sociable than ESTJs. ESTJs tend to be content with just a few personal connections, at least a lot of ESTJs I know, but ESFJs tend to be the hosts and hostesses, and they thrive when they're helping others. They fill their calendars with all kinds of social events. I have a good girlfriend who's an ESFJ, and she plans her social calendar months in advance, and she color codes her closet too. And I just can't really wrap my head around that one, because just the thought of doing it causes me a lot of stress.
Absolutely. I mean, audience, I know you know of individuals that fit this particular personality type, but are there any famous people that we might be able to identify as an ESFJ?
So famous people who are ESFJs. I know Hugh Jackman has been typed as an ESFJ, and I'm gonna agree with this, at least at first glance. At least to me, he seems very warm and empathetic in interviews. Clearly, he's an extrovert. He has natural social skills. And I'm also going to mention Steve Harvey too. He's a very social guy. He tries to understand people on a personal level. He seems really down to earth. At least that's my perception. We actually also see a lot of famous actors and performers who are ESFJs. They're going to gravitate towards these fields, a lot of them, but we also see them in roles behind the scenes, providing support and organization. So things like a choreographer or a designer. We also see them in business, in careers like an HR manager or an office manager or a bookkeeper. And then we see them in the medical field, in nursing or in education, especially as an elementary school teacher. So their heart bound by a set of rules and duties, but they're also very skilled at social interactions, and they're going to thrive in work environments with a set of standard operating procedures and a clear code of conduct.
That's great. That's great. That's the SJ family, right? When we talked about this episode, we knew that we were going to need multiple episodes to get through all 16 types. But I really am really excited about how we decided to go about it by breaking this up into families, because I think it allows us to understand our typing in greater depth when we're able to look at the temperaments too as well. So yeah, so I'm really, really thankful. I'm really, really excited about how you were able to give each person just a really quick explanation of their type, because I know that people were tired of me always talking about my INFP personality type all the time. And they were probably thinking, like, when are we going to get to me? Like, what am I? Like, that sort of stuff. And that's why we decided to talk about the preferences, so that way you have an idea of what preference you might have. We talked about the temperaments to get you a little bit of understanding of how you can group your types into different families, so that way you can understand what your individual personality type could be. And like we said at the very, very beginning, this is not to typecast you and say, well, every INFP is going to be exactly the same. Every ESFJ is going to be exactly the same. We're all different. We are all unique. This is all information to help us gain self-awareness of ourselves, so that way we can communicate better, build better relationships, and essentially make better decisions for ourselves. I know for me, it's helped me greatly by knowing what my personality type, knowing what other people's personalities types, and my interaction with them. And it's really greatly impacted and really helped me in my life.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm so glad to hear that, Mark. And, yeah, there are 16 different personality types. And of course, as an INFP, Mark, you're one of the rare ones. But yes, it does take some time to go through all of these types, which is why we're going to dedicate a few episodes to discussing them. But hey, folks, we really appreciate you staying with us here until the end. Next time, we're going to take a deeper dive into the SP, the sensing perceiving types. So with that, I am going to wrap things up with just a quick reminder. If you liked this episode, please share it on social media, give us a like or a positive comment so we can continue bringing you great content like this. Thanks, everyone. Until next time.
Thanks for tuning in. Follow us on social media and your favorite podcast platform.
And please reach out to me on LinkedIn and on my website at topcareer.com for more updated content. While the Myers-Briggs and MBTI are trademarks of the Myers-Briggs Foundation, viewpoints expressed here are our own.